I want you to just identify the number one reason why that goal won't be achieved. Like, just pretend the goal was a total failure and just design that failure a bit, but let's just pick one thing. What is the one thing that would make sure that that goal doesn't happen? And I want you to state that, write that down. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that everything any of us experience is the perfect outcome of our current system. And if we want something different, then we just have to step back, take a little responsibility, identify what we need to tweak, and then tweak the system to get that different result. And there's a lot of freedom and power in that belief, because you don't have to live a life of have to. You don't have to live a life of these are the things that are being done to me. You can take a step back and choose to do something about it. So as we look into 2025, and we have this whole year ahead of us pretty much, except for a few weeks, what goals do you have for yourself, for the practice in this year? There's so much value, and I know that this isn't any new thought, there's so much value in identifying a specific goal and getting it in writing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tools to really help you achieve something specific as we move through the year. And so to start, what I would like you to think about is think about something that you would like to be true at the end of 2025. And really write it or speak it as if it is true. December 2025, we have done this. We have accomplished this. The team looks like this. This problem is no longer happening. Just pick one thing. It can be a large goal that feels difficult. It can be something simple that maybe you think might even be silly to have as a goal. Let's say right now new patient appointments are 3 weeks in the future, and you have a goal for them to be 5 days in the future. Let's say it's you get too many patient messages and it takes too long to handle those messages. And so maybe the goal is by December of 2025, we will handle percent of patient messages by time of day every day, whatever it is. But be specific and write it down and state it as if it were true. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about what you wrote down. And now we're going to judge it a little bit and make sure it doesn't need any kind of changes. Here's what we look at it for. We look at it to decide, can we basically say yes or no at the end of the year? So December 2025 happens. Looking at the goal you wrote down, can you completely, without question, answer, yes, this was achieved, no, it wasn't achieved? And the reason I say this is many times we'll write a goal or think about a goal, and it's a little squishy. And so when it comes down to did we achieve it or not, you can say, well, we kind of did this part, and this was pretty close, so I would get to say, nope, that doesn't count. It needs to be stated in a way where a stranger could look at it a year from now and say, yes, you achieved it, or no, you didn't. So if you need to rewrite it a bit, go ahead and do that. So now, and this is something I've covered a couple times on the episodes, it's such a powerful tool, and it's why we use it all the time in our own business and with our clients' businesses. I want you to just identify the number one reason why that goal won't be achieved. Like, just pretend the goal was a total failure and just design that failure a bit, but let's just pick one thing. What is the one thing that would make sure that that goal doesn't happen? And I want you to state that, write that down. What is it? And now I want you to think about what your team believes about that goal. And if you stated this as a goal for the entire team to participate in achieving, what would they state is the number one thing in the way of you achieving that goal? What is the number one reason why it would fail? And so those two items, so one from your perspective as the physician business owner or administrator, and one from the perspective of what the team believes about that goal. Now, here's what's cool, is we did basically in that little exercise, chances are you did more thinking about the strategy of your practice for the year of 2025 than 99% of all other medical practices, and probably 75% of all businesses or more. It's something that gets put off, it gets put to the side, and it's not done, and it needs to be. But now what do we do about it? We don't just set this, down on the table or up on the mirror and come look in December of 2025 and go, darn it, we didn't get it. What do we do about it? So let's break the year down a bit. What has to happen for you to overcome the two barriers that we uncovered? So barrier 1 was the one that you thought of. Barrier 2 was the one that you think your team would think of. So state those barriers, and then in the next 12 weeks or so, let's just call it first quarter. So by the end of March, what can you or the team do to help make sure that you are on the path to that not being a barrier? And make it an actual do. What is the specific task that can be done from somebody on the team, maybe a vendor, but what can be done between now and March, or I should say the beginning of April, to determine that you're getting that barrier out of the way? And write down an action. And now let's judge the action a bit. Can that be measured? Can you, by the beginning of April, say this was done by this person or not? If the answer is no, then write the action in a specific form so that you can check it off as if it was complete or not complete. And do that for what you felt was the barrier, and do that for what you think your team thinks is the barrier to this year goal. Now, I want you to look at that goal for April 1st and what has to happen between now and then for you to be able to check off that it's completely done. Come up with a list of things. Maybe it's 4 things, maybe it's 10 things, and just write it underneath and put it in the format that is an action. In other words, if someone took this list and knew the same thing that you did, they could look at that item and go, okay, I can go do this. You have to be able to check every item off. It has to be written in a way that is clear of what is to be done. So now you have the barrier, you have what needs to be done about the barrier by April 1st, and now you have a list of the things underneath that barrier that are going to get you to that April 1st day where you can say that barrier is gone. Now, I want you to write a date by each one of those items that is between now and April 1st. Give yourself a little time in between them, but each item, put a date of saying this is when this portion of this will be done. And next to that date, put a name of someone in your organization. That's the person who owns that task getting complete. Now what you've done is more than 99.9% of all businesses. What you've done is you've identified a goal that you want to achieve by the end of the year. That goal probably means something to you. If we've just picked one, it's likely meaningful. We've already thought through its failure, so we know why it won't happen. And since we know why it won't happen, since we can design its failure, what we did is we just created a system that makes it so your goal is not achieved. And if you listen to this podcast, I believe that we always experience the perfect outcome of our current system. Well, we pretended the outcome didn't happen. We built that system. So now we know exactly the system to build to make it come true. And that was you identifying the 2 main barriers. But now just identifying the barriers doesn't change the system. We have to identify what in those barriers do we need to remove. And that's why you wrote that list. And then if you just write a list, things don't happen magically, which is why we put due dates. And you can't do everything yourself, which is why we attach the name next to who owns that getting done. So now imagine the next time you meet with your team, you say, I've thought about 2025, and the importance of us achieving this. And here's why I think we may not achieve it. Here's why I think we can overcome those things with this set of tasks. And to get these tasks done, we need to complete them by these days. And Bob, I want you to own this one. Jill, I want you to own this one because this is where your skill set is. Imagine how much clarity there is in your organization. Guess what? The team will be excited because they'll actually have this clear path of, hey, we're going to go do something on purpose for a future plan. We've got a plan in front of us. We've got timing, and we've got ownership. There is no ambiguity. You hear me talk about ambiguity effect a lot on this podcast. The idea that our brain, one of the biases, is if it doesn't understand a path, it will always assume worst case scenario. So we've overcome that as it relates to your team helping your business achieve goals. And look, we did it in a few minutes. This is such a powerful process that you can implement. And if it feels overwhelming that we went through a lot of steps, just pick a really simple goal. But we do this with our clients, and December and January is such a fun time for us because it's when we are getting all of the calls, the texts, the emails of the team achieving a goal that at first seemed like it wasn't going to happen a year prior. And you can do the same thing. If you ever want help on this stuff, always feel free to reaching out to the Physician Growth Accelerator team. And if you want to identify some common barriers to your growth that we see over and over and over again, go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals. It's like a symptom score, like you might give to a patient, depending on the specialty you're in. And it just allows you to score different parts of the business of your practice, and it'll help you kind of wrap your head around the ripple effect of different things within a practice and how it affects the total outcome. And it helps you identify the system and what we need to tweak. Because remember, we're all experiencing the perfect outcomes of our current systems. So if we want something different, we just got to tweak the system. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Physician Growth Accelerator.